Okay, so for this episode, I'm super excited because we have the youngest person that we've ever had sitting in the other seat. We got Mr. Kaden Crowther. I don't even know if I can call him Mr. We got Sunny Boy Kaden Crowther in the seat today, and I was super excited to have him. I found him on TikTok actually putting out some great content geared towards helping first-time home buyers out, and I said, okay, we got to have this kid on the show. And it was the first time that we've had somebody in that wasn't necessarily like a top producer. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to Kaden, because I think within a year or two, Kaden will have that title next to his name as well. One of my favorite things, though, about what we were able to do and have an honest conversation with Kaden about was the fact that he has not done that many transactions. And so the question that I ended up flat out asking Kaden, I said, hey, why would anybody ever use you if you've only done one or two transactions like this? And his answer absolutely knocked it out of the park. I have no doubt in my mind that Kaden is going to do great things in this industry and that he's absolutely going to crush it. So I'm super excited for you guys to hear this episode with Kaden.
I got goals to chase, I got roads to pave. Not yet where I wanna be, but I got close today.
Dude, I am jealous of the operation here. This is
Dude, it's been a long time in the making.
On these dreams like I didn't sleep today.
This is a good one. Realtors are overpaid clowns.
No matter how much I fight this, I'm holding tight like a vice grip.
Because I have harmony within business and life.
Only plus I don't mind this, I don't have time because I'm timeless. Yeah.
The goal for me is to help interview and show off and showcase who I think some of the top agents are in the state. So we got Kaden, who's been an agent. How long have you been an agent now?
It's been short. Like, it's been 4 or 5 months.
Dude, bless your heart.
So we're just getting started.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm really excited because you are by far the youngest person that we've had on the podcast. And I'm super excited too because it's been a lot of fun for us. So we upload it on YouTube, which has kind of been our focus. We have Apple, we have Spotify. We're kind of all over the place with this, but we generated over 10,000 hours of watch time in our first month, just across all of the content that we just dumped out there. And I was blown away when we started to review the analytics at the 18 to 24-year-old demographic that is following the show right now. There was a lot of people that were my age, 25 to 34, that are like right in the middle of like that home buying age. But I am super, super excited to see that demographic paying attention. And I don't know if they're paying attention because they want to be real estate agents and they've watched Selling Sunset. I don't know if they're trying to figure out how to buy a house, but like I want to help them because that has been my biggest focus since I got started, right? When I started selling, I was 24. It was literally on my like 24th birthday, I think, when I officially started selling. And there is nothing that I believe in more than buying real estate at a very young age. So super excited to have you in. We also have Maddie. I know your last name.
Jones-Swenson.
Jones-Swenson.
It's not hyphenated though.
But you're going to hear me call her Maddie Jones because I've known Maddie since we decided 16.
Yeah.
And so you're saved in my phone as Maddie Jones, and I think you will always be Maddie Jones in there. Introduce yourself a little bit.
So I am a loan officer at First Colony Mortgage, and to get the fun compliance stuff out of the way.
Yes, please.
My NMLS ID is 2120353. First Colony's NMLS ID is 3112, and we are an equal housing opportunity lender.
Beautiful.
So
Thank you for getting. Do you have your real estate license number memorized?
Oh yeah, actually no, I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say if you do,
way.
I have to look it up every single year when I go back to do CE.
There's no way.
Yeah, memorized, locked in there.
And you've been in LO for how long now?
I've been in LO for probably a year now, licensed, but I assisted for a year before that. So I didn't talk about rates, but I was doing the whole thing. Yeah,
and I if you don't know anything about First Colony Mortgage, they are my preferred lender. They've been my preferred lender since I started 6-7 years ago now, and they are unbelievable. And I think that one of the things that they do really, really well is this assistant program that they have. What they do is they have assistants that help manage the pipelines for bigger producing loan officers. So you assisted for Emily Rowley, who does Emily mind if we talk about production?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. She does roughly how many millions every year?
So last year it was her biggest year ever, but I think we did about 160 million.
So Maddie has experience of doing a pipeline of $160 million a year, and all of a sudden is full-time loan officer that doesn't have $160 million in the pipeline, but knows how to operate like she does. So a huge shout out to her. She's going to be on the show for the first couple of minutes and kind of kick in, but ultimately we're here to talk about you. And I kind of want to go back. We love starting at the beginning on the show because it says a lot, but that's going to be kind of our focus for you is what was it about real estate that made you go, okay, this is kind of cool. Like for me, for Maddie, family was in it. We really didn't have much of a choice. right? This is kind of all, at least for me, I didn't go to school. I tried, but this is all I've ever known. This is all that was ever talked about at the dinner table. This is all that was talked about on horse rides. Like this is it, right? So I want to learn a little bit more about you and kind of where your progression came from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, sorry, I do have to say one other thing. Keep going on TikTok. Like I'm cracking up because I called Maddie and I invited her onto the show, and she goes, well, who's the guest? And I said his name's Kaden something, and she goes, oh, is he that real estate agent from TikTok? And I'm like, actually, yes. And she goes, I love his stuff. So like social media is kind of a tough one to figure out if it's working or not. So kudos.
Well, I mean, props to honestly being, I guess, the principle of consistency, because I mean, I actually, just someone that she's pretty familiar with, just a loan officer that I work with. We were just both kind of trying to figure out how do we like kind of build, the TikTok, because we're younger, we kind of have, I mean, almost a leg up in the sense where we understand social media.
Yeah.
But
I also think that you being as young as you are will catch people's attention when you start talking about real estate. When I do it, they're like, who's this old dude trying to tell me to buy a house, right? When you do it, it's like, that's my peer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was it about real estate that you're like, okay, this is pretty sweet?
So, I mean, personally, I think that there's a couple different things I would say. I've always been just really impressed and just like wanting to get into the investing side of it, I would say. I'm just,
Why?
I think I just have an entrepreneurship mindset in the sense where, I've just been able to see like, I don't know, like both my parents are entrepreneurs. They both just kind of like started their own businesses. And
what do they do specifically?
So my mom,
I love hearing about this because like it's interesting to see like what kind of craziness goes into like where people end up.
You guys are going to find out a whole lot about me right now. This is great. So my mom, she owns a dance studio in Spanish Fork.
Sweet.
And I danced there for probably 8 years. I mean, just doing just hip hop, breakdance, ballroom, just like everything. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And so I feel like that, definitely helped me just like with being on stage, right? It takes something to be on stage. And so it kind of helped me, bless me that way. But my dad, he used to actually be an officer for Provo City police officer. Last summer, he retired there and just started up his own like merchant service provider, basically just like, like whenever you swipe a credit card, kind of like the process that goes into there.
What do you think you learned as an entrepreneur, like watching them growing up? Like what were your takeaways?
I think a couple things, especially for my mom. I think
who's better at it?
Oh man, I mean, my dad just barely started his business. Okay. So before that, he actually was he owned a drafting firm. So like, I guess in a sense, real estate, right? He's drafting the metal in these tall buildings. His firm actually did the Cars Land, like all of like the
that's
decorative
cool. We were just out there with
Land.
my little boy. He loves it.
So yeah, it was cool. We got tickets out there when they opened up and stuff. And so I've been kind of interested in that just because I admire him and look up to him that way. But I mean, my mom's had her studio for 15 years and she's just killed it. And it's kind of at a point now where, she does it because she loves the dancers. She loves the people, right? But ultimately it provides like what we need as a family to get by. It also provides, her to have free time to do things that she loves with her family. And I think, immediately that was one of the biggest factors for me with real estate is having that, free time, having that availability to, if I need to go do something with my family, that I'll be able to, right? And so ultimately owning real estate, having just the couple different ways that, it grows in appreciation and cash flow and stuff like that. There's no better way that you can invest, in my opinion. And so I was just like, I want to get into this as soon as I can. And the best way to go about that is just to get my license and get started and jump into the world of it, I think, that way.
So you've been going now 6 months?
So I got my license the beginning of February, I think it was. So yeah.
By the time this releases, Jonah, we're probably August when we release this?
Very end of July or August.
Yeah, so
basically
you'll be 6 months. Yeah. We're going to round up to 6 months.
6 months. I like it.
That's fine. Have you done transactions yet?
So right now, currently, I have one under contract. It was a listing under contract. It's going to be closing. I think the settlement is for like the beginning of August or something like that. So first one, I've been super stoked about it. Have been working with a couple of buyers that have fallen through just with the increase in rates, because a lot of these are first time home buyers, right? A lot of my audiences, people I'm working with, is people who are younger, of course, first time home buyers, and so it's been kind of tricky that way. But I would prefer to be on the listing side anyways, and so I'm grateful for this one, how it's been working out.
Well, you're getting in at I don't even know what the word to describe it is. Interesting?
I would say a good time.
Yeah.
I think it helps you grow so much. Emily, She was like my mentor. The girl that I assisted for always told me there is no better time to get licensed and to really start trying to produce on your own than when the market is interesting or a little bit slower, because it teaches you to sell. It teaches you to build relationships. It teaches you how to make tough deals work. And if you just come in when the market's super hot, you don't get that experience. You learn how to ride it when it's easy. And then when it drops a little bit, you have to figure it out. But if you can just figure that out from the very beginning, you have those skills to carry with you.
Well, yeah, and
forever.
I think that that's like the first half of it. And I think what that actually lends itself to is a better overall experience for the consumer.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think in the last like 18 months to 2 years, you've been in this, you've watched it. The last 2 years have not been good for buyers. It's been hard, even for sellers. Like I think there's a lot of sellers, I would say, in the last 2 years that have been put in very, very uncomfortable situations where they're having to pick between the highest offer and the best offer, right? Like there's so many things that have gone into it. And I also think that real estate agents have kind of got lackadaisical. And I think that we are going to see a lot of agents getting out, right? So now it's kind of time to start providing some value, right? What are you advising, right? You have a 21-year-old kid that hits you up off of TikTok and says, hey man, I've actually been trying to buy something. What advice are you giving?
Yeah, so I mean, I think a big part of it depends on your mindset going into it, I think, as far as if you're going to be buying. I would, in my opinion, if you're looking at it as an investment, go for it. That's my opinion, because, I mean, you know, it kind of depends what you're looking for. But if you're looking at it as an investment, go for it, because in the sense where if you get into a house now, I mean, you know, you could potentially, you know, be building some equity, right? And if you wanted, you know, come, you know, a year or so, you can refinance, right? Marry the house, date the rate, I guess is kind of what they say there.
Marry the house, date the rate.
Have you heard that?
No, but that's beautiful.
That's fun.
You
Yeah,
freaking,
right? I mean,
you kids.
I like that.
Yeah, you kids and your sayings. Good for you. I like that. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the sense, right? I mean, if
it's really true, right? Like if you, the question, I literally just had this phone call before we jumped on the show. The question that I posed to this buyer that was looking is, what do you think is going to come down quicker, house prices or interest rates? And I think over the next 12 to 18 months, you're going to see interest rates, especially going into an election year. You're going to see interest rates go down because Joe Biden is not going to have 6%. Personal opinion, and Maddie can probably give us a lot more context on that. But yeah, I think that's brilliant, right? Because the interest rate changes. Yeah, how often would you say people either refi or like get rid of their loan? Is it like every 5 years? Is that what it is?
So it is 95% of buyers have refinanced or sold their home within the first 5 years.
And that number is crazy, just to show you how not permanent. And it feels like it, right? I just signed closing docs on an investment property, and when you're looking at 360 payments on an amortization schedule, it feels like you're locking yourself in for a really long time. But very, very rarely does that loan actually mature. Yeah. Right. So I think that is super, super solid advice. So people that are young and are thinking about renting, where do you go with that?
Again, I think it just comes down to your mindset, because I think in some situations, you know, renting would probably be more beneficial. I really do. I mean, especially, you know, if you are like a college student, you know, you're in student housing or things like that. But if you're ultimately, I mean, I believe if you're renting, you don't own property, right? Again, the American dream, you don't own property. You don't, you know, have a place to necessarily call home because, you know, you're renting here. And so, I mean, I think that, again, that can be used as a tool to maybe save up or in a sense, I mean, you know, rents are increasing, we're seeing, but maybe, again, use it as a tool to save up and in order to maybe, you know, get where you're wanting to go as far as getting a home. But again, I would just say kind of just look at it as an investment tool. I mean, because you can refinance, right? Of course. Also, I mean, it could potentially be the thing where you get into a property and, you know, come a year or 2 years, you can refinance, or you can move out and use it as a rental even. I mean, there's just different things that you can go about it. And so I love real estate because in a sense where it's a tool in that way.
You keep going back to investment. Tell me why that's so important for you.
I think, you know,
because like I know for me, right, and I can kind of run you through what my experience has been. The reason why I'm so damn opinionated on people buying property as early as they possibly can is because when I was 22 years old, I had the opportunity to buy a townhome in Vineyard. Okay.
Oh man.
Do you know what they were? You were like 9 years old at this point.
Will you please tell us what the purchase price was?
Take a guess, and whoever's closest can have another water.
Let's see.
260.
234.
179.
Wow.
You're lying.
I would have not guessed on
I'm
200.
not. And
Why didn't I buy a townhome that year?
well, so that was like the thing is I didn't do it, right? As this kid that was raised in an entrepreneurial house with a dad that preached buying property, that knew what I should be doing, that had the money to do it, that wasn't that like I had every reason to do it and I didn't. Today that property is probably worth, you're appraising them, 550, 560, 570.
Yeah.
And I could have bought it. I think, I mean, what's 3% on 180?
Pocket change.
Yeah, like we're talking about like $6,000. I think that I
Yeah.
could have bought like this very first townhome for, and I didn't because I was scared. And I didn't know at the time what I was scared of, but I was scared, right? And I had no reason to be. And so now, like, I am so opinionated on this that like you are going to have to tell me, like, Boo, stop talking to me. I'm not, but like you will have to flat out tell me. I'm so opinionated on it. Like I had a little brother. We won't get into what he was doing, but it was on a 2-year church vacation. Wink, wink, nod, nod. He was 7 months away from coming home. Do you know what I did? I sent this kid a contract.
You're like, please.
And I said, Al, don't think about it. Just sign this. Don't think about it. Just sign it. I'll pay your earnest money for you. It'll be ready for you when you get home. That was 3 years ago, 2 years ago. He went under contract at $239. They're now worth, it's a lakefront condo, $450,
Yeah.
$460. That's real money for him now.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fun. It was scary, but this time he had somebody to kind of push him over the edge. And now like I am so opinionated on investing in real estate because I missed the boat. I want to know like what is it that's, because you've brought that back 3 or 4 times. So like I kind of want to know a little bit more about why investing is so important to you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of with what you're saying, it definitely is a scary thing, right? I mean, myself, I haven't bought properties yet, right? And so a lot of these things I'm talking about it's theory, but it's theory that's been proven by other people. An example in yourself, right? I just know there's a quote from, I think it's Andrew Carnegie, where he says something like 90% of all millionaires are made through owning real estate, right? And so after, there's that quote. Also, statistics that have been shown have been something around 80 to 90% of the exact same thing, right? Owning real estate. And so I think, in my opinion, there is just no better way to invest, right? Because of, the appreciation that's going to be gaining, right? The cash flow that's going to be coming, as well as like the debt pay down. And so it's just overall just the best way that you can invest your money. I mean, I think we're seeing that as well.
No, I get that. I want to know why investing is so important to you. Because there's a lot of people that don't care about it, right? There's a lot of people that are just like happy, especially at 21 and 22 years old, right? Like so that's what I want to know. Because I'm guessing, right? You're 6 months into it by the time that this releases. That's going to be a super important part of what your business looks like going forward.
Of course.
So what is it about investing in real estate that is so important to you?
I think, for me, and I guess this really boils down to not only just investing, but real estate in general really, I want to be able to be in a position where I can be providing for my family and also spend time with them. I think, wealth is time and health in the sense where, yeah, it's having money, but it's time and health where, you're able to spend time with those you love, you're healthy. And so I think, that's why investing is such a great tool, is because it provides you kind of in a sense passively, your property's going up in value, you're having cash flow coming in. And it's real estate. It's physical, right? It's not something like the crypto that fluctuates very, like we're seeing very crazily right now. It's something that's real and tangible. And so it'll be there and it lasts. And so I think, for those who are thinking about investing, that's the benefit there, is that, it provides you with that opportunity, kind of like you're saying, I'm sure, right? Where you have that, you work because you want to work, not necessarily because you have to.
Yeah.
And I think that's the goal, right? Is to work because you want to work, because you love working with people, but not necessarily because you have to, right? And so ultimately for me, yes, I want to be able to be in a position where I can provide for my family, do things that I love and have time to do that. And so I guess that's the main focus for investing there is kind of the basis.
Well, I think a lot of what goes into that investment, this is where we're going to bring Maddie in for a little bit more clarity, is what's going on with interest rates, right? And Maddie is the first lender. I don't know if we'll have other lenders on because I don't really work with a ton of other lenders, but I do want to kind of get a little bit of insight into what's going on. And I think we've talked about it on the show a little bit, but what has kind of happened over the last 2 years is purchase prices have gone up crazy, right? Specifically in our market, we're looking at like a 28 to 32% appreciation year over year. That's not over 2 years. That's each year. And a big reason for that is the current inventory shortage that we have in the state. But another big factor that nobody was really talking about, it was talked about and it was touched on, but it was not hammered in like appreciation, was interest rates were at all-time lows. Going forward, what are you guys predicting to happen? Because that obviously slows down purchasing, which is that's the purpose, right? That's the reason that the Fed is raising interest rates. It's to slow down, right? But I think there's a couple of things that let's talk through them just a little bit. For the last couple of years, like even back to when I was doing mortgages, that was kind of the big question that people would ask to try to manipulate their monthly payment a little bit. Was can I buy down? And more often than not, it didn't make sense because it was a couple grand to shave off maybe 1/8%.
Yeah.
Still not the most effective tool for you to be using, right? To drop your monthly payment, which I would say drives the majority of purchases more than what the total purchase price is what's my monthly payment.
Definitely.
Yep. So one thing that's really cool that mortgage insurance companies are starting to do is now instead of just getting a quote
really
for
quick,
mortgage
give us
insurance-
like a quick 30-second synopsis on what mortgage insurance is.
So mortgage insurance, if you don't put 20% down, you have to pay this mortgage insurance fee. That is to protect whoever is servicing your loan so that they are insured if you default on your loan. And the reason
Follow-up
for the
question to that.
20%,
Sorry, really quick. Follow-up question to that. What percentage of your buyers would you say put 20% down?
the very small amount.
Like 2-3%,
Like maybe 5.
So mortgage insurance does get a bad name, I think, at times because it does manipulate your monthly payment by a couple $100 a month.
Yeah.
But you are not a weirdo if you have monthly,
No,
if you have that.
It's
yeah.
like it's a tool to like help enable you to get into a home. And you can always refinance to drop it off, which is great. If after 2 years, you can also just request that your servicer drops it off. You can ask them to appraise your home, and if it's at a certain value, they'll drop it off. So I think it's totally fine to have mortgage insurance. The mortgage insurance companies are realizing that payments are a problem. So now instead of just having your set fee that you pay every month, you can pay maybe half up front at closing, and then that can drop your monthly payment a ton because instead of just paying it all monthly, you paid a little bit up front at closing.
Can you roll that into your mortgage?
You cannot roll it into your mortgage, but you could try to negotiate, say, seller paid closing costs. And they could cover a portion of that.
So you could have the seller. Do you have any like ballpark of premium? And I know there's a whole bunch of things that go into what that mortgage insurance premium is, as far as how much you're putting down, what your credit score is. There's a whole bunch of factors in. But going back to our scenario of like $550, what would you say the average premium? Do you know that off the top of your head by chance?
No, because
it's very case by case.
It's so dependent on credit score, and it's also so dependent on your debt to income ratio. And so every single person is going to have a different premium, but it can drop it. You can cut your mortgage insurance amount in half, and your lender can, if you have a lender that will not run 50 million scenarios for you, then I personally think you should find a different lender.
Well, this is why I am always an advocate of people that commission salesmen kind of get a bad reputation, I think, and real estate agents are not exempt from that. I will always work with somebody though that gets paid when my transaction is done over somebody that gets paid when 5 o'clock hits. Yeah. And I that analogy is very real because of what Maddie just explained right there. Like having somebody that can run all of those scenarios where you can go into them and just say, hey, this is what my focus is. This is what my goal is to drop my monthly payment. Maddie can run all these scenarios for you. Yep. And not only that, but then that's when it becomes super, super important to have a real estate agent that understands what the hell they are doing, that helps negotiate a $5,000 seller credit, a $10,000 seller credit. And if you're not thinking that those exist right now, then you probably haven't sold a house in the last 60 days because they are very real now.
You can make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing about rates going up and about the Fed trying to slow things down is that 6 months ago, you really couldn't negotiate those things. If you asked a seller to cover your closing costs, they were like, LOL.
They would just go, they wouldn't
That's
even
funny.
respond. They wouldn't even respond. They would just go to the next offer.
Yeah.
Any questions for Maddie?
I would say maybe this is something that I've kind of wondered, talking with other, loan officers, maybe something people are wondering as well is like kind of what drives that interest rate? Like what drives it? Because I've heard different things from different, loan officers. And so that's just kind of a question I had.
Yes, I love it. That's a good one. I think that's a really good question because you see billboards all day long and commercials all day long about what interest rates people are offering. Those are usually to somebody with an 800 credit score and 20% down, and it's their primary residence.
It's the perfect loan scenario that doesn't exist.
They're paying a ton in origination. Yeah, it's not real. So I would say the main things that go into it are your down payment. How much, the more money you put down, generally, the easier it is to get a lower rate. Your credit score, it goes in tiers. So if you have a 720, you're going to get a better rate than if you have a 700. And if you have a 740, you're going to get a better rate than a 720. So that plays into it. And then the last thing is just if it's an investment property, primary residence or a second home. And primary residence is going to be the best.
Got it. Okay, so that's like on like a personal individual scale.
Yes.
I guess what I'm wondering is like, I guess like, you know, over like you said, the last 180 days, you're seeing like interest rates go up and down, right? What is like the determining factor that leads to that? I guess like drives that.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So one of the biggest factors is just instability in the world. When things are unstable, investors start to go, crap, what's going to happen? We need to protect ourselves. That's when you're going to see spikes in rates. So when things started to happen in Ukraine, that is when we saw a spike in rates. And it kind of leveled back out. So it changes with politics. Like Boo said earlier, it changes with election years. Right now, inflation is the driving factor of what's happening to interest rates. So it kind of depends on what's overall happening in the economy and politically. But I would say instability and fear that people are feeling is a lot of times what drives rates up because investors want to protect themselves.
Yeah, and I think another big thing that's driving them up too is the fact that they were so low for so long.
Yes,
like
and there
that.
Has to be,
there has to be that correction where, like, a 3% isn't even on the historical charts because it was so low.
Yeah,
like it. They almost got to the point where they could not physically go lower. Like I have never seen it in my 10 years almost now of like actively being in the real estate market, and I think that probably was as big of a push as anything else was to interest rates having to go up. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a whole lot that goes into it. Political, what's going on in the world, where the money's moving to, what the money's doing. Like there's so many things that go into it, and it's always going to be unpredictable. I think what is going to be more predictable if you're trying to trying to base an investment on it is purchase prices and what purchase prices are going to do, because those are not as fickle. Okay. Well, Maddie's the best. We're going to kick her out and reset everything. Once again, guys, it's Maddie Jones-Swenson.
Yes.
Not Maddie Jones.
NMLS ID 2120353. I did not quote any interest rates today.
No payments were quoted on this show. So, okay. Well, you're great. We'll link all of your information if anybody wants to reach out.
Thanks.
She's the best.
Thanks, Maddie.
Okay, so we excused Maddie. She was unbelievable. I love the insight that she gave about what monthly payments have done, because I would say that the majority of buyers are more focused on what their monthly payment looks like right now than what they are. And I don't even want to say right now. They are more focused, and they always have been more focused. When you say what's your budget, they'll give you a purchase price, but that usually resonates and means a certain dollar amount for a monthly payment. Right. And so I think that was super, super good information to kind of talk about what goes into monthly payments, kind of where to go from there. I want to talk a little bit more, though, about your business, because you're new. Right. And ultimately, the reason why I started this show and the reason why I put the time and energy into it like I do is because I want to help real estate agents get hired. I want people to see and hear and listen, because I think real estate agents bring a tremendous amount of value in what they do. You're a little bit different, right? We've had some OGs in the chair that have been doing business for years and years and years and have a proven track record. They can look and they can say, hey, seller, hey, buyer, this is why you should use me. So now here's my question for you. Why the hell should someone use you?
It's a great question. I think, it's interesting, my position where I'm in right now, right? Because a lot of the people that I'm like targeting towards, I guess, or like I'm looking to work with, are people that are my age in the sense, right? Where they're first-time home buyers. And it's interesting, how we're seeing kind of with the market and everything, where it's kind of a tricky time for first-time home buyers. And so I think one specifically is someone that they can relate to on that, on that sense, where like I'm in the same boat with you guys, right? Like I'm literally in the same boat with you guys. Like we're all working here. I'm 21 years old, probably similar age. We're all working here to kind of improve and ultimately, right? Like in this instance, right, buy a house and so I think, in that instance, like I'm someone that they can relate with there. I think, ultimately though, as far as my business goes, I think
like what's important to you? Like what is going to be, like, for me, this podcast, any of the content that I do, it's all highlighting what my business has always been, which is to help create value for real estate agents, right? That's who I view as my client. And that has always been and will always be a focus of me, of what I'm doing within the business and how I run my business, right? So like, give us a little bit more insight into who you are and what your business is going to be built on.
Yeah. I think
and what people can expect, right?
Yeah, sure. I think two things. I think the first thing is I just want to be able to educate. In the sense where I want to, like people who are my age, a lot of them, they really just don't know, and they don't know where to start. even to buying a property. They don't know that there's opportunities that they can get in sooner than later, right? They just don't really know where to start. And so I think, providing education for them, even in just, small, just simple, 10-second or 15-second videos, or just small things that you can provide that education can go a long way. And so, ultimately, I think a lot of people, when you're looking at an agent, right, ultimately we want to be your economist of choice, in the sense where we want to be able to know what's going on so that we can help them to know what's going on. And if I'm able to help someone to know, like in the instance in the market, what's going on, then even just if they're not even looking to buy a house right now or anything, or sell a house, right? If they can just be someone who they can come to and just say, hey, what's going on with this? Like, what should I do in this instance, right? I'm providing value and I'm educating, and like that's where I would like to be. So yeah, so there's one, I guess. Second thing, personally, I believe like real estate, it's not so much about houses and property as it is about people, really. I really believe that. Like,
and what it does for you as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think me, getting into it, it's because I love working with people.
You got that from your mom.
Yeah.
Right. You said that, like, that's what drives her, is what you said earlier, right?
I would say most good things, pretty much all good things I got from her or from my dad, really. And so, but really.
What's your mom's name?
My mom's name is Susan.
Shout out Susan.
Shout out Susan. Love my mama. So I would say, working with people, really, it's so much more about people than it is about property, really, in that sense, where these people are going to move, 5 to 7 years, just like Maddie was saying, these people are going to move out of their house, right? But ultimately, it's the relationship that you create. Like, where you live, your home is such a big thing, right? It's such a big thing, it determines kind of, in a sense, where your life goes, right? Because of the neighbors you meet, the relationships that you create. And so, where you live is important, but ultimately, it's the relationships that you create. And I think for me, that is the biggest thing. Is I've always wanted to be in a place where I can help people and work with people. And so, kind of this is an aspect where I can do both those things. And so I'm just loving it.
So this is a question I'm going to ask probably any agent that comes on this show that's in their first year. What would you say to somebody that says that you don't have the experience to make this purchase, right? And I remember, the reason that I'm asking this is because I remember being 23, 24. I think I was 24 when I started. I looked like I was 18, right? You looked older than I did when I started. And so I wore a suit and tie every single day, and I tried to grow a beard as quickly as I possibly could, because this is a big investment for a lot of people. And I love what you're saying, because I think that you understand that and you're not taking that for granted. But what would you say to somebody that might be worried or nervous about your inexperience? I'm asking hard questions right now, because if you can't answer them here, you're not going to be able to answer them for a seller, right?
Absolutely right. No, I love this. I love doing, kind of being put in positions like this. And so I would say, there's no way around it. I mean, as far as
you can't change it, right? You can't change it.
Yeah, as far as like doing transactions,
you can, but it's a time thing. It's
exactly.
a 2-year in the business thing.
Exactly, and I'm working on it.
Yeah,
right? Like again, I have one under contract right now, and it's been going great. And so as far as that goes, there's not really a whole lot I can change. What I can say, though, is I think what it ultimately boils down to is your commitment to them, and your commitment to make it the very best, the very best experience for them. I think, this last deal that we had, they listed a townhouse, and, we got a couple offers in. There was one that came in, just 3 or 4 days after we'd listed, or 5 days or so, and we negotiated with them to get, $5,000 extra on the purchase price. And so it was ultimately a really good deal. But I think, talking with the sellers is late at night. Like, it was like 11 o'clock. I was on the phone with them, talking to them, because they wanted, the buyer wanted an answer before the end of the night. Otherwise, he's going to move on. And, in that instance, I think what it really boiled down to was I just kind of, mentioned, like, hey, guys, like, this is a good deal. But ultimately, you have to feel good about it, right? Like, my job is to help you feel good about this, because this is a big deal. This is a big, thing that's going on. And so ultimately, I think that's what matters, is just your commitment to them. And if they can feel that, then that's really all that matters, I think, is that they can feel like you're committed and you're going to do everything you can to make the transaction go as best as it can for them.
Jonah, you're how old?
20.
You're 20?
I'll be his age in a month.
Okay, so before you came and started working for me, you obviously have a little bit more insight into real estate in the world now. Before that, where would you have started if you were thinking about buying a house? Exactly. So what advice? I would have
asked. I would have went to my dad and said,
right,
Dad, can you do this for me?
Yeah, like help me out, right?
For me?
So what advice would you give? what advice, what knowledge, what sense of direction, and if you say call me, I'm going to kick you in the face because that's obviously. But where would you say is a great place to start for people that are even thinking about dabbling?
Yeah, no, great question. And I think, to be honest, there are more people that feel that way, similar to Joe, than we think. There are more people that do.
And I think that's why our demographic of 18 to 24 has a huge chunk of our watch time in month one because they're trying to figure those things out, right?
Exactly.
No, I will say it's really nice. Like I just listen and I edit, but I've learned so much about like real estate and like what this thing, certain terms mean and stuff. And
there's so much
really
that is,
cool.
and it's not as complicated as people make it out to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would say, you know, for those who are watching just kind of in a similar spot, I would say first thing is, you know, probably just go see if you can get pre-approved, honestly. Just
call Maddie.
Just call Maddie, right?
Yeah.
I mean, call someone who you trust, right? Lender that you trust that is committed, right? Will be committed to you. And just try to get pre-approved because.
But just like just shameless plug really quick on First Colony and Maddie. We've hit it and we've hammered down on it that not all real estate agents are created equally, right? We've hammered down on that on this show. Not all loan officers are created equally as well. So be very, very careful, just as careful as you are with who you hire as your agent, be equally as careful with who you have as your loan officer because you have just as much writing on it.
Absolutely, right? And so, you know, with that, right, I would say, again, go get pre-approved if you can, right? Because
what does that do for somebody? Give a little bit more explanation on what getting pre-approved actually, not the process, not what it is, but what it actually does for you, what it allows you to start doing with your purchase. Why is getting pre-approved? And it is for a lot of agents, but they kind of just say it. They don't explain to people that are listening that it might be your age that getting pre-approved is going and sitting down with a lender, giving them your bank statements, giving them your tax returns, really letting them look at what your financial life looks like, pulling credit, doing a whole bunch of different things like that. And ultimately what they're going to do is either give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down, and they're going to help you set a budget for buying that house.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, really it kind of helps you to see, I think why I would say that is because it helps you to know where you're at. And if you don't know where you're at, you don't really know where you can go.
You can't get there.
Exactly. And so in that instance, you just have to know where you're at, right? To kind of know, even if you need to take some time.
Even if it's a no, even if it's you're not,
exactly.
like, this doesn't work right now, they can at least say, do this, do this, do this.
Exactly. So, I mean, definitely, you know, go get pre-approved, and that'll give you an idea of where you're at, right? So that way you can know and actually make a plan for where you're going.
So what advice do you have for somebody, even if they don't work with you? My advice is always just buy something, right? Like, I'm that opinionated. Even if you don't buy a house from me, just go buy something. What advice would you give to a 21, 22, 23-year-old listening to this?
I would say, again, it comes down to your mindset, but if you're looking at it as an investment and you're going to use it as an investment, then yes, I would absolutely say buy something, right? I mean, there's the saying where I think it's like, don't wait to buy real estate, then wait.
Yeah.
Especially in Utah. I mean, just with the instance, when you think about the instance of supply and demand and houses and the prices there with appreciation, I mean, yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. If you can, I would say do it because, you know, especially here in Utah, right? Don't wait to buy real estate, buy real estate and then wait for those prices to appreciate.
Okay, well, that's awesome advice. Any other questions for him, Jonah? This is the first time we've had someone on the show your age, so now I'm looking at you.
Dude, I should be able to think of more questions, but you know what? Honestly, I would say that was just a really good answer and a really good question of like what advice would you give, because even with what I've like learned and stuff, I'm still just kind of like, I don't know where I would start. Like, that really is what I would do first. I would just call my dad and be like, Dad, like, what do I do? Like, I don't even know. Or like, I just asked Boo, I'd be like, hey, I'm trying to buy a house. Like, what do I do? Like, I wouldn't even search anything in my phone or
there's almost like too
anyone.
much just to like Google, right?
Yeah,
and
I just, absolutely. So I think that was a really good point to
and
make
you know,
that
what
question.
I will say too is like, I mean, people have related this to, it's not the same as like a doctor or I guess medical professional, in the sense where like, if you needed a surgery, you wouldn't go on Google and be like, what do I do, right? I mean, you would go to someone who is familiar with the process, who's professional. And so I think that is where having a good loan officer and a good agent who is professional, who understands the process, is very valuable. Because in your instance, right, I mean, if you can be connected with someone like that, they will walk your hand through the process, right? And especially with someone who's a first-time home buyer, that's probably what you're going to need.
That first purchase, I always tell people too, is the most important to get right.
Yeah.
Because everything else is built on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, we appreciate you coming on the show. You crushed it. We're super excited for you.
You guys
We're
are
looking
awesome.
forward to watching what you do in this.
Thank you. No, I
course.
appreciate it. It's been great.
Of course, man.